Welcome back to the Long War of the Chosen class guides for the patch 1.2 update and hopefully future patches. And first of all, thanks for all the feedback, all the nice comments on the previous guides. There's a lot of interesting discussion both there and also some of it in the Discord server, of course. And you know, sometimes I forget some little aspect or there's something I don't highlight, but given the videos are that long, I hope I can be forgiven for maybe not pointing out every little detail. I'll try to review them as much as I can, but also, as I mentioned in the introduction video, I haven't played every single spec and every single class and perk combination, so if there's something amazing that you think worked really well for you, feel free to share it in the comments. It's always interesting to see. There's a lot of interesting ideas that came up where I then thought, hey, I need to try that at some point. Anyway, we're here to talk about the specialist, and yeah, today is going to be a little bit different, but more on that later. Let's start with a thing that's not going to be different, which is there we go. The Overwatch specialist. Pretty straightforward. You have a specialist that has maybe slightly higher aim than average. No, like this guy here that we randomly rolled, 69 aim, definitely something where I would consider an Overwatcher. And so your core Overwatch perks are going to be Sentinel for the multiple Overwatch shots, Ever Vigilant, so you can run and get a free Overwatch at the end of the running. By the same applies what I said on the Ranger discussion of Ever Vigilant. I would strongly suggest the reliable Ever Vigilant mod, even though some people say that changes the balance a little bit. I think it's silly that picking up loot or running through a door would cancel Ever Vigilant from triggering. I'm assuming that's still not been fixed and people are just using the mod. So yeah. The other thing is then, of course, cool under pressure, allowing you to critically hit with your Overwatch shots and giving you extra aim on that. So that's really the core, I would say. Now, some of the other Overwatch-specific perks could be considered core, but so covering fire is strong. I would say definitely strong. How often are you shooting on people in cover though, or that are taking shots? Is it that's where I'm kind of usually say I would take it myself, but I can see an argument to be made that it's not necessarily the way you use your Overwatch most of the time. So picking up one of the alternatives might be worth it just for some additional utility. Similar when it comes here to the end rolls and Killzone. I really have been a Killzone enjoyer since, you know, ever since it came. I think XCOM 2 baseline already had Killzone on the sharpshooter. So Killzone is always a fun perk to play. It's just gotten a little bit, in my opinion, unreliable. Sometimes you get situations where not all your shots trigger, and so I've been kind of rarely getting the full value and enjoyment out of it, but Killzone is still a fun perk. But that means for me that this is going to look a little bit ridiculous when we look at the optional perks, because it's pretty much everything else. So outside of Blinding Protocol, I basically put a box around everything here, because I think there's an argument to be made for every one of those. Doesn't mean I don't have a favorite. So let's start off, and the only reason here why I didn't put another box on Blinding Protocol is this is a turn-ending ability, so when you use it you wouldn't be able to go on Overwatch, so not necessarily all that great. There's also a lot of utility, like Blinding Protocol used to be great because it's a targeted disorient of an enemy. Always great to cancel an Overwatch. Now that everybody gets interference for free on Squaddy, the whole Overwatch clearing aspect of Blinding Protocol kinda gets left out in the cold. So, you know, not so strong anymore. Anyway, Scanning Protocol versus DerAva Protocol. I'm leaning strongly towards scanning protocol. I think it's a lot stronger than I initially gave it credit to. And if you watched my previous campaign, basically during the course of the campaign, I more and more was in team scanning protocol because it was just so valuable for scouting, especially when you intentionally or not intentionally lost your concealment. It has a huge radius. You have more than enough charges to cover most missions. It's really good. And it's a free action. Like, what's not to like? Revival, really good early game. If you have somebody with Revival, you can almost ignore drones because any stun or disorient, you just cleanse with that. Also great for cleansing potential panicked or disorient people that got on the wrong side of a sectoid. But I think it's much rarer that you get to use it as opposed to scanning protocol, which, scanning is always worth it. And scanning also then has the advantage, especially for an Overwatcher, that you can scan, you see where the enemies are, and you can kind of move to the edge of the vision or one tile off from where you want to activate them and set up a nice Overwatch trap. So that's really good. Sergeant Row, as we said already, covering fire is much better than it used to be, but still, I wouldn't put it as a core perk. Healing protocol, or medical protocol rather, is kind of nice for a ranged heal. Now keep in mind though that you're kind of struggling with equipment slots on your Overwatcher. You probably want some sort of ammo because applying ammo effects with multiple shot abilities, right, with 2 shots with Sentinel, is kind of nice. You probably want some ablative. You might want a vest, but maybe you also want a skulljack because you're still hacking and getting a higher chance of getting the hack rewards for a mission. Higher chance to maybe shut down that drone, higher chance to disable that scanning tower is kind of nice. So do you have room to also bring a medkit? I don't know. And then if you don't bring a medkit, you would only have a single charge for medical protocol. So kind of this is more like my third choice here, and the second choice, if I'm not picking covering fire, would be failsafe. Just as I just said, you're going to be hacking a bunch of stuff, and failsafe just makes these hacks kind of free. You can always go for that tower hack to see if you get a large intel cache extra on the mission. And also, if you bring a skulljack, it prevents you from getting feedback damage when you inevitably fail the skulljack hacking mode. Alright, Gunnery Sergeant. Now, threat assessment seems like a really obvious choice for an Overwatcher. And there's definitely a lot of use cases for it, so I think I still would put that as the primary pick. But it's still like you have to spend an action to give threat assessment to yourself. And that giving you then Overwatch and the 8 protocol. How likely is it that you have a second Overwatcher in the same squad where it's worth it to put threat assessment on that? So a lot of it will probably depend on your typical squad compositions. But you can get a lot of value out of this. Like, this is still going to be on Overwatch Specialists my first pick, so to say. Like, you can do things like threat assessment yourself and then move forward with your second action to activate a group, right? That's combining it again, scanning protocol. You scan, you see some enemies, you're like, okay, 8 protocol yourself, move forward, activate them, get free Overwatch shots during activation. So definitely some combo potential there. So I would put it as a primary Overwatcher pick, but I wouldn't go so far as say it's a core ability. Because you can get a lot of value out of Rescue Protocol, getting other people in the squad out of bad positions on unlucky activation. It helps getting everybody to the evac when you're just dashing halfway across the map on a large jailbreak mission or something where you wrote a really big map and you're just helping people get to evac in time. Or allows you to take with somebody else a risky flank shot where they're then stuck out in the open and then you rescue them back to safety. Like Rescue Protocol has a lot of users. You get a fair amount of charges. So definitely for a more supporty-oriented Overwatcher, an option. Again, my primary pick, but I can definitely see an argument for this. And then there's Full Override, where I would say if you rolled exceptionally lucky and got your hex score really, really high, either because you had a high hex score rookie or you just got super lucky with enemy protocol all for the campaign, then there's definitely some argument to be made to say, hey, I want to be full overriding enemy mechs on every single mission whenever I encounter them. So, situationally useful. It's just full override can be really strong. Like, if you start to roll into a mission, first enemy group has a heavy mech or something, you full override them, suddenly you have one more guy on your team, they have one fewer guy on their team, and that guy that you have also is super tanky. That can swing a mission around. That can really be different between a nail-biter of a mission and just a flawless ruffle stomp as your mech just can't be killed by the enemy. But it's a bit of a gamble. So yeah, I'd say still a viable choice. And then coming to Master Sergeant role. Again, we talked a little bit about Killzone. It's kind of, the thing that makes sense for Overwatcher. I am just really been disappointed a little bit lately not getting the amazing kill zones that I got in the past. So, I'd still probably take it as my primary pick here. Resto is kind of nice to have, having that emergency heal everybody button. You hopefully want to be never in a situation where you actually have to use it. So I'm always a little bit unenthusiastic about abilities like this. Like, do I really want to pick a Master Sergeant ability that I hope will never trigger? I don't know. And then there's Capacitor Discharge. I can see some situations where, again, having this combo here, let's say, well, probably not scanning. Let's say you're still in concealment, you spot a bunch of enemies, you threat assessment yourself to get overwatches, and then you send your gremlin in for capacitor discharge on them, disorienting them. And if you then also rolled coup de grace on your XCOM roll, getting really, really nice crits on everybody that you're shooting at. Situationally useful. A nice little AoE attack might get more value out of this than out of a kill zone. Might. Alright, so that's the Overwatch specialist. Let's look at the other specialists. One final word on the Overwatcher. Obviously, the Overwatcher is not going to be an officer, since you want to be overwatching. And, officer perks being mostly turn-ending, etc. Your support specialist is going to be an officer. And in the past, in the previous class guide, I made a separate spec for like a healing support specialist and kind of a hacking support specialist. And I think that distinction is a little bit... I don't see that distinction anymore. For me, and by the way, this is all you're gonna see. There's not gonna be any boxes here. For me, there's a lot of viable choices in each rank where you can flex a little bit. A lot of it depends on your squad composition. A lot of it depends maybe even a little bit on your XCOM role perks, and also on your playstyle preferences. So basically, go back in the video to the start of the Overwatch Specialist. Look at those 3 perks that are the core perks for the Overwatcher. Well, these are the only 3 perks that a support specialist will probably never take. But everything else... Oh, maybe outside of covering fire. Everything else is on the table. And I didn't want to just put 20 boxes here on the screen. So let's just go through the... And one of the reasons why I say I don't want this distinction here between a healing specialist and a hacking specialist is because there's very little synergy. Like there's the only perks that affect anything else in the row is like Savior, giving your other healing abilities more HP, and then maybe you could say that failsafe is making your hacking abilities a little bit easier to use. But it doesn't really affect anything else. So you can do a little bit of a mix and match, picking whatever you want from from each row, trying it out and saying, like, you know, if you feel like you very rarely get value out of chaining Jolt, yeah, just, you know, see if Savior is working better for you, and if you can get some value out of that. If you always forget to equip medkits anyway, then maybe the healing abilities are not yours. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So we already talked about revival and scanning. So that leaves us with blinding, and I guess I also already talked about blinding protocol. I think they are all viable choices. I would kind of, you know, we're gonna do a not this upper mouse button. We're gonna do a what is my primary pick for my kind of support officer specialist, right? This is what I'm gonna put down, but I'm still saying all perks in most rows are viable here. Again, this is good for additional scanning, additional scouting, especially if your shinobi has gone down or has gotten themselves revealed. Lots of value on scanning protocol, but definitely revival, blinding are choices. Again, I would say revival, secondary choice, blinding has a lot of its value. Then here, probably one of the toughest choices in the game. Field Surgeon, during much of Long War II and also the pre-1.2 era, this was considered such a strong perk that people were always wondering, like, what do you even put against this to make this not the obvious choice? And, well, I think this rework achieved that it's a really tough choice. Like, your Overwatcher is never going to take Field Surgeon. Like, they need Sentinel, otherwise you're not actually an Overwatcher. And Trojan is making things, in my opinion, a lot more convenient, especially early game. So the way Trojan works, right? You hack an enemy. They will be stunned for an extra turn, and when they get out of the stun, they take damage. Up to 8 points of damage, depending on your hack score and the hack defense of the unit. In most cases, that means for, like, if your basic initial hack chance was 100%, you're very likely to do 8 points of damage to the unit. So what happens in the background is there's like 8 hacking rolls that are being done that determine how much damage you do. What this most importantly means for me and the way I play is any drone you hack will just automatically die in the early game. And if you do that from concealment, you don't even lose concealment that way. On some missions, like let's say a crate extraction mission, that also doesn't start any timers. So a lot of value in there. I think Compound Rescue also doesn't increase the security level, but don't quote me on that. Very rarely encounter single drones on those ones. So my preferred choice, Trojan, just because of the way you can deal with drones and early game basic turrets, just by having a specialist hack them and take them off the field. That being said, Field Surgeon, reducing wound recovery time for all soldiers by 1 point. So basically, you can take 1 point of damage on each soldier, and that they will not be injured. They will not have any wound recovery time. They're immediately available again. That is a really strong effect. Now, we can probably have endless discussions on medical protocol versus failsafe. I'm more of a failsafe fan. Simply because, you know, I like to try these tower hacks. I like those early drone hacks. Well, against drones, mostly you have 100%, right? But being able to just, if you see an interesting hack reward on a tower, to just take it, even if it's just a 50% chance, without any negative effects, to me always feels really strong. You get a little bit of extra supplies, or maybe a PCS, or intel, or whatever. Just some additional potential income that you maybe wouldn't have tried otherwise. So when it says it prevents any negative effects, that also means if you're still concealed and you fail the hack, you will not get revealed. So you can do that whole shenanigans from concealment. It also has the bonus effect of on Skulljacks, again, you're not getting damaged when you fail the hack. And then also there's this whole wonderful action point return if you actually fail the hack. That the whole thing was technically really for free, which makes the whole tower hack thing even more convincing. That being said, it's not to be understated, medical protocol is really strong. Being able to take to heal somebody from a distance, potentially remove any negative effects like burning, which would prevent them from taking any actions, is just a really solid ability. Alright, moving on. Next thing, neutralizing agent, talking about removing negative ability and negative effects versus airdrop. So I'm as I mentioned in the previous Grenadier guide, I'm a Grenadier enjoyer. I'm an offensive Grenadier enjoyer. So for me, airdrop is always the thing I want to go for. Having 2 additional grenades is nice. Once you get plasma grenades, these will be plasma grenades that you drop in somebody's pocket, even if you didn't have plasma grenade when you started infiltrating. So this is just super nice and gives you grenadiers on longer missions a little bit more viability, so they're not going to run out of grenades and just going to sit there shooting with their ballistic SMG. Neutralizing agent. Aid protocol neutralizes fire, poison, acid, and bleeding. To me, this is like the one row where I'm kind of strongly, even more strongly on Team Airdrop. I would even say maybe consider if you'd rather just pick up Ever Vigilant for some occasional free Overwatches. What I don't like about neutralizing agents is removing fire, poison, acid, and bleeding is a reactive thing you want to do. Aid protocol, on the other hand, is something like proactive, right? Somebody's in a bad position, you want to throw that aid protocol on them so they don't get hit. But that means then if you use it, it might then be on cooldown when you need it to cleanse fire, poison, acid, or bleeding. So you might then be in a little bit of a dilemma where do I use it now to prevent somebody from getting hit? Or do I not use it and sit on it the whole time because I might need it next time to cleanse somebody's fire, poison, acid, bleeding? So it kind of changes the way in which you use it. You use your aid protocol, which also we come back to when we're talking about threat assessment, because then you have the third option of using it as an offensive tool. And you gotta make sure that you're kind of not constantly second guessing yourself on what the best use of your aid protocol is gonna be. So that's why I'm kind of. It sounds great on paper, but whenever I played with neutralizing agents, I probably got that effect to like once per campaign, where it's like, oh yeah, right, I have that. I actually cleansed the poison. Yay! So I'm not thinking this is a particularly strong perk. Alright, Tech Sergeant. Savior versus Chaining Jolt. I'm notorious for not having medkits on my specialists, so I'm more on Team Chaining Jolt. But if you like your healing med specialist, then Savior is obviously a really strong choice. 4 more hit points restored on medkits is nice to have. And again, this is a, if you're going for medical protocol, I'd say Savior is kind of an auto pick, getting more value out of it. On the other hand, medkit already restores, if you get the upgraded medkits, I think 6 HP. How often do you need a 10 HP heal over 6 HP heal? I don't know. So if you really need 4 charges of medkit with 10 HP healing per charge, yeah, then something went really wrong. But then it's also nice to have it. Chaining Jolt is the absolute meme perk, I want to say. It's kind of, sometimes it's going to be amazing. You zap, you hit 3 targets, they're all robots, they all die, you feel amazing. And sometimes the enemies are just spaced so far apart that it won't jump from one to another, and you only hit a single dude. Keep in mind, this replaces combat protocol, so you're not gonna have your combat protocol anymore. You're always gonna be chaining jolting. I can't think of a situation where you wouldn't want to AoE jolt multiple enemies. Like maybe you wanna, chaining jolt the Warlock's greatest champion to kill him, but you don't really want to hit the Warlock, so you don't trigger his reaction. You can't control that. But that's a very rare situation where I don't think I've ever been in. So I don't think it's only chance to use 20 targets, 5 tiles, 3 turn cooldown. I don't think it's specifically mentioned. Oh, up to nearby and 2 nearby enemies. It's like, okay, where's the free target limit? I was looking for the number 3. Now it says up to 2 nearby enemies, so 3 targets total. Alright, it's mentioned. Never mind. Moving on. Gunnery Sergeant. I think this is probably another one of these tough choice roles, similar to Corporal tough choices. I already gushed a little bit about Rescue Protocol, allowing you a lot of tools on how to use this perk. Then Threat Assessment is kind of a thing for your support specialist. I would say it's very, very much dependent on squad composition, and also kind of, in a way, your barracks composition. Like, if you're running with fixed squads and you know, hey, he has like an Overwatch Ranger and a gunner with some Overwatch perks for whatever reason in the squad, then Threat Assessment is going to be super strong. But if they are in like a bunch of assaults or whatever, it might not be the best perk here to take. So then Rescue Protocol is probably the better choice. So, use your own judgment on what to pick up. Full Override, already said, can be a really strong perk to swing a situation in your favor. It's kind of, I kind of got a little bit, I think it was nerfed at some point, so the chance to actually full overriding, like the hack chance, is much lower. It's still kind of nice, to take over like a white mech, a red mech, or also a heavy mech, or any sort of drone. You're still getting one additional body on your team, and you can use them a little bit as a mimic beacon to soak enemy fire. But in my just, unbiased or very much biased personal preference, I'm more on Team Rescue Protocol. If only to sometimes save a turn on getting everybody to the evac. Especially also on things like retaliations, the evac retaliation, where you need to run around and gather all the rebels, and then being able to get somebody rescued back to base. It just seems really nice. But it's a tough choice. Like, this is not for me set in stone at all. Like, I just as often pick full override as I pick rescue. And again, if I have kind of lots of Overwatchers in my barracks, then threat assessment also becomes a really good choice. And then, yeah, I think Capacity Discharge is the stronger pick here. Although this is now a very much non-healing at all support specialist. But yeah, I think Resto, again, it's the great ability to have, but also the button you never really want to press. And you always find an opportunity to throw in a Capacity Discharge. Also helps you to secure some kills with your specialists so they level up a little bit faster. Although at that point they don't need to level up anymore. What I'm talking about, this is more for that. But yeah, you know, makes them feel better if they secure some kills. Whatever, shut up. So yeah, that's my rant about support specialists. Again, a lot of choices based on your personal playstyle preferences, squad composition, barracks composition. I don't think there's a hard way to build it, and I think lots of viable choices in each row. And that's why I didn't want to just have 3 different specialists with the healing support and the hacking support, because I think it's just the lines can blur, and this what I marked here with the talent planning mode is just what I personally prefer. Everything else really viable. Alright, we're gonna go to the XCOM row perks. Actually, before we go to the wiki and the XCOM row perks, I was looking just at this soldier here, and this is something where it's really hard for me to cover all these kind of situations in a guide. But sometimes you see something in the XCOM row and you come up with some unconventional ideas, and the question of, could this actually work? So I'm seeing here close combat specialist, and of course specialists can pick up cool under pressure. Is this a situation where you potentially build some sort of support specialist, but you say, you know, chaining jolt, yeah, savior, yeah, no, I'm actually gonna pick up cool under pressure, run him with a shotgun, and whenever I find an opportunity, I just run into the middle of a bunch of enemies and CCS them. That might be fun to try. This is like okay, I've definitely never had that combo, I never played with this, but if I'm just doing a Paper Tiger theory crafting here, I'm like, why not? This could actually work. Hey, whatever, we have high combat intelligence here, we could even say pick open fire on top of that. On the other hand, then you also have things like, okay, hey, hang on, I've got lock and load. So suddenly kill zone becomes more interesting because I have as long as I get kills with the kill zone, I reload my weapon and I basically have a never-ending kill zone. So yeah, things to keep an eye out for. All right, let's head to the wiki. Right, let's look at the XCOM row abilities that a specialist can get. Now, last episode, last guide for the Grenadier, I said I wanna kind of restructure this a little bit and look at any perks where you say, okay, this XCOM row perk is so strong, this is gonna change the whole approach on how I build this character. I don't think that exists for the specialist, similar to how it, you know, for the Grenadier we only really had 1 perk. Now you might say, hey, what about rapid reaction? You know, suddenly you get 4 Overwatch shots instead of just 2. That seems really strong. Yeah, but if your specialist has crap aim, you know, you're not gonna turn a 57 aim specialist into an Overwatcher just because they have rapid reaction in XCOM row. That's just gonna mean you get disappointed multiple times per turn instead of just 1 time. That's I think it's still going to be more stat dependent, your choice, and more dependent on what your squad needs, rather than something where you see a perk and you say, okay, now I have to build it this way. All right, but let's look at the perks here in terms of which spec wants to pick up something. So for our Overwatcher, right, as I said, rapid reaction. If you get that on your Overwatch specialist that you're building, anyway as an Overwatcher because you want to and because you have decent stats, fantastic. Pick it up. Similarly, I would say Ready for Anything is a decent choice for an Overwatcher. Avenger is nice to have, it takes advantage of your Overwatch abilities, so certainly something worth picking up. Of course, you always only have one of these perks, but yeah, all three of them are kind of nice to have. Similarly, we just talked about lock and load and synergy, or the special use case of making kill zones suck a little bit less, because your ammo problems are not going to be that big. But it's not only kill zone. I think an Overwatch specialist is struggling with ammo either way, so lock and load gives them a lot of more flexibility. In terms of other shooty Overwatcher perks, Hunter's Instincts, usually you're shooting at flanked enemies when overwatching, so that's nice damage buff. Aggression, since you can crit on Overwatches, also kind of nice. Open fire, definitely decent since you want to be opening up on enemy groups. Grazing fire, we talked a little bit about this when we were talking about the Overwatch Ranger, and this is basically a nice pickup, especially if you see rapid reaction in your tree and grazing fire. Try to pick up both. Now that's 55 points, that's a bit of an investment, but rapid reaction, you get additional Overwatch shots as long as you hit your enemy. So if you miss, that stops your whole Overwatch chain. Grazing fire gives you a 50% chance to re-roll that miss into a graze, and then your rapid reaction chain will continue. So something to look out for when you pick this up. Like getting this is kind of the golden combo. Then we have coup de grace. I talked about it briefly, like about a combo where you use your capacity discharge and threat assessment. I think that siren got picked up by the microphone. Sorry about that. Yeah, where you can threat assessment yourself, capacity discharge enemies, and then get the bonus aim and crit against these now disoriented enemies. Kind of a niche application, but if you don't have any good Overwatch perks in the rest of a tree, then hey, it's just 10 points. That's kind of nice to have. As for our supporty friend, it's kind of slim pickings here in terms of perks that make that support role better. Sensor overlay is of course a nice buff for the squad to have. This is even on an Overwatcher, if you don't have anything else to spend your points on, 10 crit for your whole squad pretty much against enemies that you see is a nice boost, right? This is really like 10 crit. I feel like it sounds like it's not a lot, but it's for everybody against any enemy. You don't need to do anything, There's the officer ability Get Some, which is, just for this one turn, everybody gets 20 crit, but also only the guys that are close enough to the officer when he triggered that. This is like kind of a little bit more unconditional. It's not unconditional. Enemies you can see, but yeah, you can move your specialist that they can see most of the enemies. So yeah, I can't stress that enough, how nice of a perk that is to pick up. What I consider a little bit of a trap pick is disassembly. It sounds kind of nice. Killing an enemy grants 20 hack for the next 3 turns. But most of the time, if you need to hack something, that's probably going to be at the start of the engagement and not on the second turn. So kind of securing a kill on the first turn to hack then something on the following turn. I'm not saying it never happens, but I think the use case for this is kind of very niche, and I don't think that's worth 30 points. We had disassembly on one of our soldiers in the last campaign, and I'm not sure if it ever was relevant. That could have also been me not, you know, thinking ahead with disassembly in mind, but I just think like most situations I want to hack on the first turn of engagement, you know, because that's the situation where we need it. And feeding kills to somebody just to trigger disassembly and getting the hack bonus is a little bit tricky, and you don't even know after you kill something, will I find another enemy that I can hack in the next 3 turns? Or rather in the next 2 turns, since, yeah, the turn where you trigger disassembly, you just spent a turn-ending actions to get the kill. So unless you command or teamwork the specialist, they can't immediately take advantage of the increased hack score. Anyway, enough about this. Yeah, rest of the stuff here. Again, there's some things that are kind of always decent, like hey, if I can pick up some lightning reflexes or maybe even some shadow step, it gives me a little bit more flexibility for a soldier. Maybe I pick up something like Hail of Bullets to have my support specialist to have outside of combat protocol an additional guaranteed damage pick off that low health target ability. Maybe just something to keep them a little bit more defensive. Maybe the free grenades. There's a lot of opportunity picks, but nothing really that makes anybody on the support specialist side better at their job. Nothing that affects healing, nothing really that affects hacking outside of disassembly, and we already talked about this one. Shredder is obviously kind of, you know, having more people that have reliable shredding is always nice. Are you gonna be shooting the enemies though? Is that the best use of your actions? Well, I guess if it's a big enemy that needs to be shredded, possibly. But you know, it still kind of depends a little bit on your squad composition. Yeah, nothing else really strikes at me. And if you get the golden combination of perks, right? For, I don't know, you get a flashbanger and you pick up rapid deployment on your Overwatch specialist, and then I'll say, hey, why don't I also pick up Watch and Run? And suddenly you have like an additional way to get yourself into Overwatch while contributing to the whole system. That can be a niche situation where this all works together. But I can't imagine that that you don't find anything better to do with 45 points. Gotta have really, really bad rolls otherwise to not take advantage of that. Alright, and I think that's me done with the specialist. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments as usual. And also any preferences of which classes you want to see next. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.